So I'm Amy. I'm the Cateran Yomp manager at ABF, the Soldiers Charity. I've been at the charity for about 8 years now, so no stranger to the charity and no stranger to the Yomp either. I think I've worked on it 5 or 6 times, so I've seen most of the route by now. I mean, not the same as walking it, but I am relatively familiar. Really enjoying working on it in a lot more detail so far. Looking forward to getting to know everybody and in the run up to the event. Training is obviously very important and something I'm sure you've all got lots of questions about. So without further ado, I'll hand over to the person you're actually here to hear from, Neil.
Hi, my name's Neil. My kind of background, I served in the British military for 30 years and 1983 until 2012. When I left, I went into full-time coaching. So I coach runners, I coach triathletes, I coach people doing military-style events like Para 10, Fan Dance. I work with people looking to rejoin or join the military. And I'm actually neighbours with Andy and Kaz from True Great Events, who put the Yomp on. And I've worked at the Yomp. I'm always at the same place. I'm at the 40-mile mark at Kilrye. So if you're kind of going past Silver, then you'll see me in a cowshed at whatever time you get there.
Great, and then well, thanks Neil for taking the time out to answer a few questions.
Yeah.
So let's jump straight in. What are your main tips for training for the 54 miles?
I mean, it's a good question. I think with any kind of endurance event, then I would kind of deconflict it. I would make it as simple as possible. I would ignore the fact that you're perhaps going to have to carry a Bergen, that you're going to have to maybe carry some kit. I'd ignore the fact that it's in Scotland. I'd ignore the fact that the weather may or may not be raining, snowing, sunny, hot, windy, wet, whatever. I'd make it as simple as possible, and I'd say, if you're going to do the 54, then you have to be able to cover 54 miles. And that doesn't mean that you need to do that in training, but it does mean that is what you need to do, because the fact that you're going to be potentially wearing boots, wearing trousers, carrying a Bergen, in all sorts of conditions, going over hills, bogs, whatever, then that just adds on to it. So I'd start by the fact that it's 54 miles if you're doing gold, and you have to be prepared and trained to be able to cover safely 54 miles. I'd look at what the event is. The event's about endurance, it's about strength endurance. So you need the aerobic endurance, you need the strength endurance to be able to cover that ground. And then I would layer everything on top of it. In terms of training itself, 2 key principles: specificity and consistency. Consistency is the number one. So if you can be as consistent in training as possible, you're going to give yourself the best possible chance of success. And then I would layer on top of that consistency the specificity. So by that, I mean making it Yomp specific. So it's not a road marathon. It is a Yomp. So if you're doing the walk, then you now need to layer on the fact that you're going to perhaps wear other footwear other than training shoes. You're perhaps going to be carrying a load, any equipment that you can outfit and put in that. You need to be used to using. Nutrition, what nutrition are you going to take? Are you used to using that? So in broad brush terms, Amy, that's the kind of big headline items I would kind of look at.
Great, thank you. That's very useful. And just to remind everybody that the 12-week training plan went out by email last Friday. So check your inboxes or junk boxes for the first 12-week newsletter. So on to the next question, which is a very common question we get. What advice do you have for people re footwear? And one specific question we've had is shoes or boots for the Yomp?
Okay, so I mean, kit questions are always kind of first and foremost for these kind of events. The runners that we see at the front of the event are going to be wearing training shoes, so they'll be maybe wearing trail shoes, maybe even wearing kind of road shoes, but they'll be seasoned ultra runners in the main, and they'll be very used to that. Two considerations when you're considering, am I going to wear boots or shoes? One, are you going to be carrying load? So if we go back to the guys that are running, they're not really carrying any load. The reason you might want to wear boots if you're carrying load is for ankle protection, and it stops you kind of going over on your ankle. I think the second reason that you would consider whether you're wearing boots or shoes would be, what are the conditions like? So what have the conditions been like before? What are the conditions likely to be like during the event? So if it was me, if I was carrying load and the conditions were poor, then I would definitely be in boots. If the conditions were bone dry and I wasn't carrying load or was carrying light load, then I would consider wearing, shoes. There's a couple of things that layers again on top of that you need to consider. Whatever you're going to wear, you need to, for me, you would need to have it now. So you need to be, if you don't have boots and you're thinking about wearing boots, then you need to be buying boots now, because you've only got kind of 3 weeks to break them in, to get used to wearing them. So there's an acronym called TESTIT, so TESTIT, which stands for try everything several times in training. So you need to be making that decision. Am I wearing boots? Am I going to wear shoes? You need to have those boots or shoes. You need to be wearing them around the house. You need to be wearing them in conditions outside. And you then need to be wearing them in kind of race conditions. So if you are carrying load and you are obviously going to be going over hills, then you need to be wearing those kind of boots or shoes in those type of conditions. So that's the specificity part of it. I'd kind of step two back from the kind of boot and shoe question. I would say, the thing that goes in the boot and the shoe is your feet. So you need to look after your feet. So prior to the event and not just before the event, you need to be thinking, my toenails cut. Are they, are there any sharp edges when I have cut them? Am I, do I have any areas of hard skin in my feet? Do I have any existing blisters that need treated? Am I going to be putting Vaseline on my toes or not? Am I going to be taping my feet, maybe taping my toes? When I was in the military, I've got quite narrow feet. And back in the day, the boots were just issued before we were allowed to buy our own kind of Gucci kit and standard issue boots. So my feet moved about. So I used to tape my heels. So if it was me, I would carry my own tape. I use a tape called Haplaband. It's a bit like zinc oxide tape, the modern zinc oxide tape. And I'd actually tape my heels up. And so you need to think first and foremost about your feet. Secondly, socks. Are you wearing one pair of socks? Are you wearing 2 pairs of socks? Are you wearing the kind of twin skin socks? Are you wearing socks that are waterproof, like the sealskin socks, or not? And have you tried that? So that, how do the socks kind of fit with your feet? Where are the seams? Where do you have to watch out? And then you're into your boots or shoes. So how does the foot in the sock fit within the shoes or boots? So if you Google how to tie a pair of boots, you'll find quite a few kind of YouTube clips on how to tie boots, and they'll all be different. So you maybe need to try different ways of lacing up your boots, depending on the shape of your feet and your ankles, whether your feet are wide, whether they're narrow, maybe one of your feet is longer than the other foot. So you need to kind of consider all that. I think lastly, in terms of boots, do you want a Gore-Tex boot, which is going to keep the water out, which is a good thing, but it's also going to keep the water in, which is a bad thing. So if you've got a Gore-Tex boot, then if you step in a river, shallow river, then your foot's not going to get wet. But if you kind of step in up to your knee, then your boot's going to fill with water, and that water's not going to get out. So you need to kind of think do I mind that? Or do I want a non-Gore-Tex boot where I don't care that my foot's going to get wet because I know that it's going to get, the water that's in the boot's actually going to permeate out of the boot. So there's a whole kind of range of kind of questions, options that you kind of need to consider and then make your decision. But if we go back to the top, and just to make it easy, if I was carrying loads and or the weather was bad, I would wear boots, but I would buy those boots early. I would break those boots in. I would use those boots in a range of conditions and know that I was going to be okay wearing those boots. We do see a lot of people with feet problems kind of later on. I think maybe even a last consideration is if it was me and I was carrying load, I might even put a pair of trainers in my pack. And if it all kind of goes bad, and my boots were rubbing, hopefully they wouldn't because you'll have tested all this before. But you have the option, if you're on a road section, to even stop and change into your boots. Actually, I will say one more thing, and it's kind of boot related. If you're on the Yomp and you start to feel that you get in a hot spot, you start to feel something's rubbing, you maybe have something in a sock, a bit of dirt, or you've taken your socks off at an aid station, and then you kind of put them back on, and you've got something in it. If you can feel that starting to rub, I would stop and I would sort my feet out, because the 5 minutes it takes to do that will save you an awful lot of time in the future were you to get a blister or were you to get an issue with your feet. Does that kind of, do you think that kind of answers that, Amy? Or
I think that more than answers that. Thank you, Neil.
Giving people a million things to kind of think about. But I think it's important that you think about all those. It's not an easy answer. It's not, would I wear boots or would I wear shoes? It's one of those, it depends. If you're an ultra runner at the front, you're going to be wearing training shoes. You're probably well versed in what you do. You're probably quite used to that. So I'd definitely be wearing shoes if I was looking to run the thing. If I'm walking and I'm carrying a pack and potentially the weather's bad, I almost certainly would be wearing boots. But I would look after my feet. I'd have trialed my socks. I'd have trialed my boots. I've known well in advance exactly what I was doing. I wouldn't have gone out the week before and bought a brand new pair of boots and never tried them before the Yomp.
Yeah, definitely a rookie mistake there. Brilliant. There's some things that I'd never even considered, that the Gore-Tex issue. I always thought, brilliant, it keeps the water out, but you're right, it does keep the water in if you get wet.
Yeah.
Just on the footcare issue, we do have a footcare guide which basically summarizes a lot of what Neil has just said. Again, I'll say this many times over the next 12 weeks. It's in your weekly newsletter. At the top, there's a little bar that has lots of quick links, and you'll find a link to the footcare guide there. We can also send out little card versions for you to put in your wallet, so let me know if you'd like one of them. So moving on to the next question. You've kind of touched on this, but I think it's a good point to expand on. Kit, what tips do you have for kit on the Yomp?
Again, I think I would say the same thing. I mean, the guy's obviously going to get a kit list. And it's really important to not skimp on that kit. I mean, a bit of an aside, we kind of run kind of trail camps and stuff like that. And quite often everyone wants to have the lightest kind of kit because they immediately think, if I've got light kit, I'll move faster, it's less weight on my shoulders. And of course they're right, until something goes bad. So until you need the kit. And one of the tests that we do is we say to people, pack your kit and go and sit in your front garden for an hour. And see if your warm kit or your wet kit is adequate. So you're just sitting in your front garden, it's quite safe. If something went really bad, you can go inside. But for me, it is actually, safety kit is all about being safe. And when you consider the times that it actually takes is so much better in the Yomp because people are prepared. We have aid station with a number of people around. But if you go down with a problem, somebody's not going to be there in 5 minutes. It's going to take a period of time to actually come and get you. And if you expand that to the wider kind of mountain rescue times, you're probably going to be at least 6 hours to maybe even days before mountain rescue teams come and get you. Now, that's not going to happen to the Yomp. There's going to be plenty of people around. But I would start from that safety kit's there for safety. So I would look at what the minimum requirement is, and actually I would have the best kit that I could possibly afford. If if something's waterproof, it needs to be waterproof rather than shower proof. So I would always err, and I always do actually err on the side of caution. In general, I'm very happy to talk about specific kit. Amy, if people got questions about, what the kit list says that I need to carry this. What is considered adequate. And I get that the runners at the front will carry small packs and they will be going for the lightest possible kit that they can. But I would start from a perspective of kind of safety. And again, I would come back, whatever kit you're going to use, you absolutely need to know how to use it. So you need to know what it is, what it does, how to put it on. There's no point carrying a compass if you don't know how to use a compass, regardless whether the kit says you need to carry a compass. If you bought some, and I can't think, but if you bought some piece of kit because you've been in Tizos and you think it's a great idea to have this kit, or some salesman sold you it, you better know how to use it. If you're going to bring a tent, you need to know how to put up your tent. But yeah, those are my kind of general kind of thoughts on kit. We're very happy to answer any kind of specific kit questions.
Yeah, compass is on the kit list, and after it, we have specified that it needs to be taken out of the packaging. So we definitely advise that people know how to use that because it could be very important on the event. Once again, the kit list is being written at the moment, just being confirmed. And it will be sent out in the next kind of fortnight or so, once again in your weekly emails. So keep an eye out for them. And then we have one specific question from Graham on Facebook for you, Neil, which is quite a good question that others may also have. Graham says, as long as I stick to the training plan, does it matter if I juggle days about to fit in with work, etc.?
So the quick answer is no, it doesn't matter. It's and an awful lot of the athletes that I coach will have to do that simply because the work and family and potentially injuries, and I would definitely be listening to how it felt. So regardless how the training plan is a generic plan. It's not written for Graham specifically. So, he should, I would say, within the philosophy of the training plan, if he can. So if it says even on it, if it says on a Monday, do an easy 30-minute run, then yes, he can swap that to his Tuesday session. But I would, if he can't do that, then he has to do something else. Then I would keep the philosophy as easy. So what I mean by that is, let's say the weather's horrendous where Graham is on a Monday and he can't, this isn't really the question he's asked, but he can't do a run on the Monday. He could do an easy bike instead of an easy run, for example. But yeah, there is no problem whatsoever in moving the sessions to fit in with his life, his social life, family life, work life.
Brilliant, thank you. And before we open it up for any other questions, is there any other advice you have for anyone taking on the Yomp that you think they need to know?
Yeah, I think the Yomp's a fantastic event, which is why I'm involved with it. And really why everyone else is involved with it. I can't speak highly enough about the Yomp. ABF, the Soldiers Charity, is a fantastic charity. It is my neighbours that put it on, and they put on a fantastic event. The people that do it are fantastic, and that's one reason that I go back year on year. The volunteers that are there and all the aid stations are fantastic. I think for the participants, you can do an awful lot more than you think you can do. So I would enter into it, wholeheartedly. I would enjoy the whole experience, and when times get tough, I would just remember that you can actually do an awful lot more than you think you can do. And just get to the next aid station. Break it down. If you're doing the 54 miles, don't think about 54 miles. So, as I said before, I think my aid station's in a cowshed at mile 40. So people have gone past silver. They've still got about 13 or 14 miles to go. But we never talk about that when they get to us. And some people get to us 3:00 in the afternoon. Some people actually get to us about 3:00 in the morning, and the following morning. But I always say it's so many miles to the next aid station. So it's the old adage of you can't eat an elephant, just start with the tail type thing. When you get to us, just say, okay, it's 3 miles this way to your next aid station. Just get to the next aid station. And once you're there, the people will say the same thing. It's just another 3 miles. And all of a sudden you've done 6 miles, you've only got 7 miles to go to the finish, and that's the way to do it. Break it down into aid stations. I think the second piece of advice I would give is there's a whole lot of great things on the Yomp. There's an aid station that gives you gin. There's air rifle shooting. There was one that gave you ice creams. If you are doing the 54 miles, then it's very tempting to stay and have a couple of gins and another ice cream and shoot air rifles a bit more. It is kind of a long way to go. And where the sun's shining and it's 1:00 in the afternoon and you're eating ice cream and it's all great, that's a big difference when you meet me in a cowshed at 2:00 in the morning and you've still got 14 miles to go. So I would enjoy the experience. I would enter into all these things, but it'd be time efficient, and because time will creep up on you, and all of a sudden it gets dark and things look a little bit different in the dark. So yeah, that's my kind of overall kind of thoughts and advice on the event.
Great. And I've had a few more questions just come through while you were talking. First of all, any top tips if you hit the wall?
Yep, I would sit down, or I would slow down. I would slow the pace. So I'd slow down the pace. I'd kind of recompose myself, mentally. If I could eat, I would eat as much as I could for about 20 minutes. So it depends what they mean by hitting the wall. If they're talking about hitting the wall in terms of energy deficit, that kind of classic marathon runner, as long as I didn't feel sick, and I'll cover that. If they are just deficient in terms of energy, I would slow the pace right down. If I was with others, I would say, I'm not feeling great, guys. I need to slow the pace down. I would not necessarily stop unless I needed to. And for about 20 minutes, I would eat as much as I could. If I didn't feel great, then again, I would slow the pace right down, and I would drink some water, maybe some water with electrolyte. I wouldn't eat anything for about 20 minutes. And then I think that you will come good. So slow the pace off. If you're feeling okay, but you just kind of no energy, you've hit the wall, I'd eat as much as I could. I would borrow, if I didn't have, food, which hopefully you do, but, I would take food off other people if they were willing to give it to me. And I would eat as much as I could for about 20 minutes, and you'll come good. If I'm feeling sick, I would just go to water for about 20 minutes, and then hopefully you're going to come good. But I guess the question comes from that classic marathon runner. I've hit the wall, i.e., you've run out of energy, so you need to be replenishing those energy stores.
Thank you. And just following on from that, you said that you would eat as much as you could for about 20 minutes. What would you advise eating? Is there any
So,
particular snack that works best?
yeah. I mean, the first thing to say is very individual. I mean, all of the science shows that regardless what people might read online, is that your body and your brain requires carbohydrate. And for an endurance event, kind of over 3 hours, I personally would stay away from kind of gels and sports drinks and jelly babies and that kind of thing. I'd probably have them with me if I needed a quick hit, but I would personally use things like rice cakes. You can make your own rice cakes. In fact, Amy, I can send you a kind of a recipe, very simple recipe for making kind of sticky rice cakes or your own kind of rice balls. But it's that kind of thing. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. My lovely wife's American, but peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are great. Simple stuff, white bread, sandwiches. It's for me, it's that type of food that your body actually needs. And in fact, your brain works on glycogen, so your brain requires carbohydrate as well. When you take any food in, you need to be drinking because you need that kind of osmolality in your stomach to be able to digest that food. So for me, it would be simple stuff, rice cakes. It would be things like sandwiches, and nothing too heavy. But people have done ultras on pork pies and cashew nuts and all of those kind of good things. It's very, very individual, and it goes back. And when I will beat this drum on every single one of these that we do. That test it, try everything several times in training. People need to. If people are going to use peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, they need to have tried that. Not just because I say it's a good idea. They need to have tried that. If they want to use pork pies, that's fine, but they need to have tested that. And as a backup, I would have the kind of short, sharp, kind of hit sugary type snacks, maybe a gel, maybe some sports drink, and probably definitely some electrolyte in, and not just water. And there's stuff at all the aid stations. You'll be amazed at what is actually at the aid stations in terms of things that you can eat. But yeah, the things that you require in terms of going back to the previous hitting the wall question is carbohydrate. And I personally would go real food carbohydrate, but everyone that's kind of listening into this needs to trial it, and trial it in the conditions that they're going to be faced with. So you don't need to go and walk 54 miles to go and walk 54 miles. Marathon runners don't run 26 miles in training. But if you go out for a walk in training shoes and shorts and a t-shirt, and you have a sandwich and you think, yeah, that was okay, and you've been going for about an hour or something, you say, yeah, that works fine. I'm just going to do that. But, you might get to mile, or you might get to hour 16 in the Yomp, carrying a pack, wearing boots. It's now dark. Well, that sandwich might feel a little bit different then. So in your longer runs and your kind of longer, typically Sunday outings, or I think the training plan takes you up to about 8 hours as a kind of outing. But you need to be trialing that nutrition under those conditions, not under kind of false conditions, as it were.
Great. Hopefully that answers the question. I'm sure it does. So we've talked a lot about how we should be kind of training in the kit that we would be wearing and trying to replicate the conditions as much as possible. What happens if you live in a flat area? How would you train for hills in a flat area?
Yeah, I mean that's a kind of really good question. I mean, if they have access to a treadmill, you can put treadmills on a kind of on a kind of incline. But let's take the extreme condition. Somebody lives in a city that they can't get out of. I would then say, how are we going to replicate strength? The strength that's required for the hill. So I would kind of turn to a kind of strength regime. So somebody lives in the center of Amsterdam, and has absolutely no hills. and can't get out to any hills, but still wants to do the Yomp. I would look at going to, qualified PT, somebody who's qualified in strength and conditioning, and looking at doing some typical classic, big compound movement strength, squats, deadlifts, Bulgarian split squats, lunges, those type of movement patterns. Because it's quite difficult to replicate hills if they really can't replicate hills. But if they can get, that's an extreme circumstance. Can they get? You live in London. Can you get to, I don't know, Box Hill? Can you get to Primrose Hill? Can you get to Greenwich Park? And okay, the hill in Greenwich Park is only, I don't know, 400 meters long, but you can do hill reps up and down that. So you don't need to come here to Scotland to walk up and down a mountain. I would actually do it. I would do hill reps. So I think, I don't think there's many people that maybe in the next 12 weeks can't get to somewhere that's got a hill. So I would make the most of their time when they could get to a hill. But if they really can't get to a hill, then I would turn to what the kind of requirements of going up a hill are. And that, for me, is down to pure strength. So I'd be working, calf raises, squats, deadlifts, Bulgarian split squats, lunges, those kind of lower body, big compound movements with good technique. So I would maybe go and ask somebody at the gym, or if one of your friends is into that kind of thing, I would go and ask them. But that's a good question.
We have had a follow-up actually. So you mentioned that you could go to the gym, or if you have access to a treadmill, you can put it on an incline. What level of incline would you recommend?
Yeah, and that's a kind of good question. I mean, you're trying to, if you are going to the gym, I mean, first of all, it's going to be, what incline does your treadmill go up to? So some of them will go up actually quite steep, and others won't. I'm not sure what the answer would be to that. I would put it to, an incline that would replicate the conditions. So I'm not sure what their kind of treadmill goes to. You've got to be, looking at kind of more than 6-10%, if it will go up to that. Some of them are graduated just in numbers, but it's got to feel like you're walking up a hill, because your boots, and whether you're going to go to the gym with your Bergen on your back and your boots, whether you're even allowed to walk in it in your boots, then your kit feels different when you're going uphill as well. So if you could do that, that would be a great thing. If we're just looking at physically training the kind of energy system and the physiology to go up a hill, then I would put that hill to whatever percentage you can go to, maybe 10%. I think the other thing I would do if I was doing a treadmill run, some of the treadmills have a hill setting, so you can put it on a hill setting and do a hilly run. So it's more of a kind of undulating run. And the other one you can do is, 3 minutes at 3%, and then maybe 1 minute, lower it down to 1% and do 3 minutes at 1%, back up to 3%. So again, you're doing a bit like hill reps. You're kind of replicating this kind of undulating conditions. Now, I think that's going to train both the cardiovascular system and the kind of physiology to get you used to kind of running up hills or walking up hills.
And if you are training at a gym, would you recommend using a step machine as well?
Yeah, step machine's another good example of because when we're going to a gym, what we're really doing is we're training our kind of physique to replicate, what we're going to see on the day. So a step machine, even a Versi climber, are really good machines that will kind of replicate those kind of conditions and utilize the same kind of muscle groups, so kind of glutes, hamstrings, quads, calves that we're going to be using on the event. If you go to work, if you got stairs at work, walk up the stairs. At lunchtime, walk up and down the stairs at work, or if you're in an office block, but choose the stairs instead of lift. I think you can be smart with training. I don't think you just need to say, well, training's 1 hour of the day, after a finished work. I think you can kind of be clever about it.
Yes, we definitely have 6 flights of stairs we have to get up at the charity to get to the office. So
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough. Right. Another question we've had is, should you try to make up training sessions that you have missed for whatever reason?
That's a great question. So the people that I coach, of which Kate is one, but the people that I coach, my kind of bottom line is that we don't play catch up. So if you were following the Yomp program, and Monday says you've got to do a 35-minute easy run, and I'm not able to do that whatsoever, then I would just miss that. If you have a racehorse, here's my coaching analogy that I give them. If you have a racehorse and it's sick or it's lame or whatever, you put it in the stable and you give it some fresh hay and you give it blankets, and it doesn't care that it's not doing the training. And when it comes out of the stable on the Tuesday or the Wednesday or Thursday, whatever, it just does the session that it's going to do. So because this kind of question goes along with, I've caught COVID, I can't train for 10 days, or I've been ill or picked up an injury. It's kind of the same thing. Your body, same as a horse, you can't catch up with the training. You can't say, well, I didn't train Monday, therefore I'll do 2 sessions on Tuesday. Or, I didn't train Monday, Tuesday, so I'll do 3 sessions on Wednesday, or I'll do a double session Wednesday, a double session Thursday. So the bottom line for me is, if you're following the Yomp program, if you can't do a session, I would miss that session and just carry on. Going back to Graham, I think it was Graham's question, can I move sessions around? That's a different question. So if Graham couldn't do the session on the Monday because of something, then he's asking, can I move them around? I think this question for me is slightly different. I think this question is, I haven't been able to do a session. Do I do a double session? Do I do a longer session the next day? The programs are written to be, I didn't write the programs, but the programs are written to be, kind of progressive. So I wouldn't do that. I personally would just miss that session, a bit like the horse, wouldn't worry about it, and then I would crack on with the session on the Tuesday. But that's where it does come down to a little bit of specificity. If you keep missing the Tuesday interval session, or the Wednesday hill session, or the long session on a Sunday, then I would look to saying, well, actually, you maybe need to be swapping your days around. So it's quite a difficult one to actually answer. But the bottom line is, don't play catch up. Just move on with the training program.
Great, thank you. And the last question I've had submitted is, how important do you think a team is to finish the Yomp?
A team?
A team, yeah. So we advise people to sign up in teams, and certainly from bronze onwards, you need to be with at least 2 other people, so teams of 3. How important do you think it is to have that camaraderie and have a specific group of people you're planning to complete the event with?
I mean, it's 100% important. It's when you're in the military, and it isn't a very military thing, but when you're in the military, you don't fight for Queen. I know it's a bit obtuse, but you don't fight for Queen and country. You actually fight for the guy or girl on your left or right. And people might have heard people saying that, but it's 100% true. So for me, the teams are really important, and you can see the bonding in the teams when they come into the aid stations. I mean, they absolutely look after each other. So it is a team event, for the people that are going longer. I'm not quite sure what they're asking. Are they asking how important is the team? I mean, it's all about the team, because it's all about the team finishing. I remember last year, and we get quite a few people kind of struggling towards the end, and one young lad kind of came in the aid station, and he was carrying his Bergen, his rucksack, and he was carrying his mate's Bergen and his mate's rucksack. And I actually said to him, Monday morning you need to go down to the recruiting office because British military need, he wasn't in the military, the British military need people like you. That, and they were having a laugh, his mate was hobbling a little bit, so he was just carrying his rucksack. And we've had, I mean, Kate will know this as well, but we've had we had one young lad who was in the military. He was in the RAF regiment, and he was doing it with his dad, and his dad was struggling. He kind of finished, and then he went back out there and finished with his dad. So for me, it's all, being part of the team is what it's all about. And you kind of, I think you can gain strength from the team because you're not all going to feel great all of the time. I can tell you that now. But you're equally not all going to feel bad all of the time. So some of you will be feeling good. Others will be feeling not so good at that time. And the ones that are feeling good can be a little bit more chipper, and there's always a bit of banter goes on, so they can kind of chivvy the ones that aren't feeling so great along. And then, do you know what? 2 hours later, that's going to be reversed. So, yeah, I think it's really important, and it's part of the Yomp. I mean, it's you see them finishing as a team. You see them crossing a line, kind of hand in hand, arm in arm, as a team, and it's, for me, that's what it's all about.
Brilliant, yeah. I think definitely my favourite stories from the Yomp in the last 8 years I've been here have been people who have signed up as individuals, because we do get a lot of people signing up as individuals who then meet people on the Yomp, and then they'll come back the next year with that same group, and they have made friends for life from the Yomp. And just to reassure anyone, if you are signed up in a team of less than 3, or if you are signed up as an individual, we will group you up with other people just to cross the start line. And if you get to bronze and you are on your own or not in a group of 3, then we'll make sure you're paired up with other people. And realistically, as you walk around, you talk to other people, you walk with other people. It does happen very naturally as well. So that's it as far as I'm concerned from questions. Have we had any others submitted in the last few minutes, Kate?
We don't have any more submitted, but if you would like to, feel free. You can either put them in the chat or you can unmute yourselves. If you know how to put your hand up, you can also do that.
And I mean, as I've said many, many times, the weekly emails have started. Do make sure you read them, particularly the training guides. There's a lot in there about nutrition. There is some information on kind of strength training and some exercises. A few that Neil has mentioned, that it is brilliant. It's good to help you just get up those hills anyway. Oh, we have had one question. So Neil, Paul has asked, would you recommend gaiters?
Yeah, and again, good question. I mean, I think it goes back to something I said earlier. I would look at the weather conditions, and the weather condition leading into it, and the weather conditions that it's likely to be, because we have had, as you both will know, we've had kind of everything in kind of recent years. So I think the gaiters are great if it's going to be wet, or it has been wet. They're pretty light, so it's the kind of thing that you can carry with you and potentially put on if you're not going to be wearing them from the start. So I think that's what. Yeah, I think I would look at the weather, and I would, if necessarily, bring them with me, but maybe just carry them.
Neil, I was going to ask, because I've seen you a few times at mile 40 odd, usually in the middle of the night. What are the main kind of issues that you see at that time? Like, if you could tell the people watching what you think, I suppose, the biggest mistakes are that you see, what would they be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the two kind of, in terms of kind of medical issues, feet and just fatigue. So our aid station at 40 miles comes, as I said, between silver and gold. So they've achieved silver. So they've got that in the back pocket. So whatever happens, if they pull out at our aid station, they get silver. they've still got 13 odd miles to go to gold. So it's actually quite a long way. If they're suffering with their feet, suffering with, some kind of muscular injury. So there's a kind of mental element to our aid station. I think the last thing with our aid station is it is in a cowshed, but it's a really nice cowshed. And we have a lot of chairs, and 2 years ago we had a big heater in it. So you kind of come in, you sit down, they stay a bit too long, and they kind of get quite used to it, and then they can't bring themselves to get up. Not least that they think, do you know what, I've got silver, and it's a long way to gold, and I've seen somebody else who's here who's getting a lift back, and that all sounds very nice at 2 o'clock in the morning. And they, I think, mentally kind of think, do you know what, I'll just go back with them. So, I think there's a fatigue element, a kind of mental and physical fatigue element. There is a kind of foot issue, and we normally have 2 or 3 medics at our aid station, and predominantly they are working on feet. Occasionally you'll get kind of lower back or muscular injuries, or somebody slipped or gone over an ankle, that kind of thing. But I think that's the. I mean, you've been there as well, Kate. So I mean, that's the main things that I think I've seen. Have you seen anything else?
No, I think those two things are kind of exactly how you would describe it. I think for me, that point is probably. I mean, I've never done the Yomp either, but just from I've seen the Yomp, I've seen what happens at the Yomp. It always seems like probably one of the hardest parts for people. As you say, it's the middle of the night for most people. They're tired. They are not. They've still got quite a way to go, even though they've done the bulk of the work already. So yeah, I feel like it's and I don't know how to say this respectfully, because I love to see you in the middle of the night, Neil, in a cowshed. It's very nice. But for some people, it's quite a sad place. They're very tired. Yeah. But yeah, feet and comfort. That certainly this year in particular, I noticed a lot of people getting very, very stiff sitting down, exactly as you've described. Just they've taken a seat, it's nice and warm, and then they haven't wanted to get back up again. So yeah. But it's always got lots of good food, and it is warm, so it's a nice place to have a wee chill out for 5 minutes, but don't linger.
Yeah, I think don't linger, and it goes back to something, I answered to one of Amy's previous questions, which was, for me, don't linger at any of these aid stations. Don't linger, stop, enjoy it, partake in it, because it's all part of being a Yomp, of the Yomp. If you didn't eat the ice cream or drink the gin or shoot the air rifle, then you're kind of missing the point, But there's a difference between that and kind of, if we use the word linger, but lingering. I'd encourage people to be really time efficient. So if you stop because you need to tie your shoelace, or your bootlace, or you need to readjust your bergen, or you need to go to the loo or something like that, then at the same time, the rest of your team can be. So if I stop because I need to tie my shoelace, then while I'm stopped to tie my shoelace, my team should be going for a pee, getting some food down their neck, having a drink, sorting the bergen out, rather than me tying my shoelace. We walk 5 minutes down the road. My mate stops because he wants to sort his bergen out. He does that. We walk 5 minutes down the road. Somebody else stops because they want to have a pee. 5 minutes down the road, somebody else stops because they want to have a drink. So be really kind of time efficient. That doesn't mean you need to rush. That means you just need to be efficient. And yeah, so don't linger at any of these kind of either at the aid stations or when you stop yourself, and then think about those things. Like, okay, Neil stopped to do his boots up. Right, I'll just get that get my head torch out the top of my bergen, or I'll go and have a pee while he's tying his boots up. So yeah, not only don't linger at the aid stations, but don't kind of linger along the way.
Great. Once again, great advice. Thank you. We've had one more question on the chat. How important are walking sticks during the Yomp?
It's very individual. I think if you went on, any of the kind of, you only have to Google, walking sticks, or walking poles, and you'll see conflicting kind of information. I think for me, it's very individual. I personally have never used them. I know one of my brothers was walking in the Alps, doing some stuff there, and all of the Alpine guides use them. They're far more popular in Europe than they are in the UK for some reason. And there's all sorts of stuff online about the loading that they take off your knees and the loading they take off your ankles and things like that. But equally, there's plenty of people that do the Yomp and other things and never use them. Not least everyone that's in the military doesn't use them. That's not a reason not to use them. I'm just saying there's enough people not using them as there is. So I would say it's very individual. If you are going to use them, you need to understand how to use them. So you probably got enough time if you've never used them. If it was me 12 weeks out, I wouldn't go out and buy some walking poles. Not least that you've got to get used to using them. But if somebody else has used them in the past, loves them, likes using them, it's good at using, I would take them with me.
Yeah, we've seen definitely echoing if you haven't started using them now, definitely start yesterday.
Yes.
On one of our other long distance walking events, the Frontline Walk, we've seen several instances where people have just started using them on the walk and then ended up with blisters or hot spots on their hands just from not being used to it. I think that is it from everybody. If anyone has any last questions, now is the time to unmute and say hello. But if not, that is a good time to stop. So thank you everyone for popping on. Thank you everyone who's watching this later. It's great that you're taking such an interest in your training. Just to remind you of the reason we're all here, we're obviously taking part in the Yomp for the experience, but also to raise funds for the Soldiers Charity, so soldiers, veterans, and their immediate families. Again, we'll be talking on the Facebook group, on the Facebook page, and in the newsletters more about the charity, and talking about kind of the people we've helped, the other charities that we help. And just to remind you of the fundraising incentives. So if you hit your target of £400 by the 1st of May, you'll get an exclusive Cateran Yomp buff in the post. We don't sell these. We don't give them away any other time. So this is the only chance to get one of these. And then if you raise £500 by the fundraising deadline, you'll get a Cateran Yomp water bottle. And then everyone who raises £800 gets a great Cateran Yomp kit bag. Again, we don't sell these. We do sell quite a lot of merchandise on the event, but we don't sell the buff, we don't sell the water bottle or the kit bag. So you have to hit those targets to get them. And in addition to that, everybody, the first 20 people who hit £1,000 raised get a VIP start. So you essentially start right at the front, you lead out the Cateran Yomp 2022, and that's for you and everybody in your team, as well as getting a free Yomp hoodie. I think we've had about 5 of those places filled, so still quite a few left for anyone who's just getting started on their fundraising. So brilliant. Just to say another thank you to Neil for giving up your Sunday night and coming to talk to us. I'm sure it was invaluable for everybody. We are hoping to do a few more of these in the next 12 weeks. Thinking about footcare, one on footcare specifically, and one on logistics of the actual event. If you have anything that you would like us to cover, then drop me an email, post it on Facebook, and we will try and cover everything we can. So from me, Neil and Kate, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you in June.